Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Full Armor of God, and today I wanted to share a dream that I had this morning. I believe it is very prophetic and timely. I will get right to it. It says, had a dream I was waiting in line for my bank to open. The atmosphere in the room was dark. I'm not sure if it was daytime or at night or right before sunrise. I think my husband was with me, standing behind me, although I did not see his face or speak to him. I was first in line. Then I saw to the left of me some people sitting at a table. They were waiting too. I was becoming impatient since it had been a half hour that I had been standing in line. I decided I would walk up to the bank tellers. Previously, I saw them talking like they were huddled together. They were whispering. They had concerned looks on their faces. Although there were 4 people behind the counter, only one man was designated to wait on customers. He looked like he was of Mexican or Spanish descent. He had a very worried look on his face as he spoke to his superiors at the bank. The one person farthest to the left was intently looking at the computer. The other 2 bosses were male and female. When I approached the counter, they told me they were not open yet and I had to wait longer. Then only a few minutes had passed when they announced they were open. Immediately, I saw them wait on the woman seated at the table. I became angry and approached the counter. I told the older blonde woman in charge that I was first in line. She began berating me, telling me that I was a horrible person, like I had cut in line ahead of the elderly African-American woman at the table, when the opposite was true. I defended myself to the woman bank supervisor of how charitable I was and how good my character was. I could not believe how rude she was to me. I awoke at 6:08 a.m. Now I'm recording this today, which is Tuesday, January 28th, and there is a recent development that I will play a video for you. But first, what I want you to do is to look at this drawing that I drew about what my dream was about. And to me, it looked like almost like a courtroom, even though it was a bank. So I believe that there's some legal characteristics that are going to be depicted in the interpretation of this dream. But I want to go through and start explaining some of the parts to the dream that I believe are significant. I'm waiting in line at the bank. So I'm waiting to find out what's going to happen with some type of a funding issue. So I'm really, waiting for the bank. And if you've ever waited somewhere where it's something to have to do with any type of monetary income, you get pretty impatient and you get pretty frustrated, and you're very nervous if you figure out that you're not getting the money that you're supposed to be getting. Okay, so that's number 1. Another thing that stood out to me was the woman at the table. Now, when there was really more than one person at the table, but I couldn't draw all those people. I'm not very good at drawing people. but I drew the one woman that stood out to me who was an African American woman. And when you're seated at a table, I believe you're waiting for, usually when you're waiting at a table, you're waiting to be served. Either if you're in a restaurant or anywhere that you're sitting at a table, you're usually waiting to be served. And in this case, it was a bank. So if you connect the dots, if you're waiting to be served at the bank, you're waiting for your money. Whatever money, type of money it is that you are expecting to come in. Another thing that stood out to me was the length of time that I had waited. It says here, I was becoming impatient since it had been a half hour that I had been standing in line. A half hour. There is one scripture that I found in the book of Revelation, Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. I'm just going to play the entire chapter of the book of Revelation, chapter 8, the King James Version.
Revelation 8. And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. And there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer, and filled it with fire of the altar, and cast it into the earth. And there were voices, and thunderings, and lightnings, and an earthquake. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died. And the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And it fell upon the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood. And many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. And I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels, which are yet to sound.
So I knew immediately after I had this dream that it was prophetic. At first I thought maybe it was some type of a banking crisis, but as the day went on and I was watching the news, I found out that President Trump is going to enact a freeze on federal funding on many programs at 5 p.m. And I will play a video at the end that gives you more information about this. But another thing that I was thinking about all day was the woman that had yelled at me, and I'll read it here again. It says, I became angry and approached the counter. Now, this is at the bank. I told the older blonde woman in charge that I was first in line. She began berating me, telling me that I was a horrible person, like I had cut in line ahead of the elderly African-American woman at the table. When the opposite was true, I defended myself to the woman, bank supervisor, of how charitable I was and how good my character was. I could not believe how rude she was to me. I awoke at 6:08 a.m. I did look up 6:08 in the Strong's Concordance. Strong's Greek Concordance, 6:08 is the word apokleo. The definition is to shut out, to exclude, to close off, meaning I shut fast, close, shut up. If you look under where it says usage, it says the verb apokleo is used in the New Testament to convey the action of shutting out or excluding someone or something. It implies a deliberate act of closing off access or entry, often in a metaphorical sense, such as excluding someone from a group or community. Okay, so this funding issue that's going to be shut off at 5 p.m. I'm recording this. It's almost 5 p.m. Right now it's 4:42. Without any warning, is going to exclude many programs. And there was a press conference earlier this afternoon. I watched some of it, and there's a lot of questions that seem to be unanswered. That's all I'm going to say. But I also was thinking about the woman who had berated me in this dream, and I thought she looked familiar, and here's what I found. I saw Judith Light, who played Elizabeth or Liz Donnelly in a fictional character from the NBC crime drama Law and Order back in the early 2000s. I never watched it, so I don't really know, but this is who I saw. And I remember her from a sitcom back in the 80s. I believe it was called Who's the Boss? And if you think about that, Law and Order, okay, so this is a new law. And who's the boss? Okay, who's the boss right now? Who's our president? Makes you think, doesn't it? Another thing that stood out to me was the Mexican man in the dream. It says, although there were 4 people behind the counter, only one man was designated to wait on customers. He looked like he was of Mexican or Spanish descent. He had a very worried look on his face as he spoke to his superiors at the bank. The one person farthest to the left was intently looking at the computer. The other 2 bosses were male and female. So you've heard, I'm sure, about the recent deportations of many people across the Mexican border. And I believe there was actually a shooting between the immigration law officers and I don't know if it was police officers from Mexico, but I believe there was a shooting there as well. I'm just telling you how prophetic this dream is. Now, I want to end this video with the information that I found about this freeze on funding for these programs that are federally funded. So please, I don't know if these judgments are right around the bend or what's going on, if they're, going to happen very soon or how this is all going to play out. But whatever's in the Bible will come to fruition. It has to. It is prophecy. It is written. It is true. So please get to know your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ right away. Accept Him into your heart, and you will be saved from the destruction to come. And may God bless you.
Your big priority right now is deporting public safety threats and national security threats. How does changing the ICE policy that allows agents to conduct arrest and enforcement at churches and schools help with that?
There's no safe haven for public safety threats and national security threats. People say, well, are we really going to a high school? Well, people need to look at the MS-13 members and Tren de Agua members who entered this country, a majority between the ages of 15 and 17. Many are attending our schools, and they're selling drugs in the schools, and they're doing strong arm robberies of other students. So we not go into schools or hospitals as a matter of practice, but if it's a significant public safety threat or a significant homeland security threat, there's no safe haven. We'll go where we need to go to take them off the street.
But you obviously are someone, you've been working on the border for years, sir. I mean, you got an award from President Obama for people who don't know watching. And you also, have worked through these administrations. This was the policy that's been in place, I believe, since 2011, and it wasn't changed before. I mean, do you have any reason to believe that elementary schools or churches are harboring, these violent immigrants who are here illegally?
But like I said, when the circumstances arise, we got a national security threat, a significant public safety threat, we're going to go where we got to go, whether it's a school, a church, or a hospital. The national security is important. And look, name another law enforcement agency. Does the FBI have those requirements? No. Does DA have those requirements? No. So I shouldn't have those requirements either. We have a national security responsibility. We're going to take these people off the street. If it's out of school, that's what we're going to do. Again, it takes a lot to get approval to go into school or a church, but if there's a national security threat, we're going.
What does it take? What is the standard, I guess, to go into an elementary school? Because what we had heard from immigration advocates is that this is going to provide a chilling effect to parents in the school drop-off line or something of that matter.
It shouldn't be a chilling effect unless their child is a terrorist or a public safety threat. If they are a public safety threat, national security threat, they should be chilled. They should be afraid because we're looking for them.
Well, if their parent is here and they're an undocumented immigrant, I think was more of the argument that they were making.
They're not off the table either. I mean, if they're in the country illegally, they got a problem. I mean, it's not okay. Look, it's not okay to enter this country illegally. It's a crime.
Trump administration announced a sweeping freeze on all federal grants, funds already approved by Congress. Chief Washington correspondent John Carl is tracking Trump's executive action. John, the administration says this is just a temporary pause, but it could have major consequences.
George, look, there is a lot of confusion this morning about what exactly this directive means, but it may be the most far-reaching executive action this White House has taken yet. It could potentially halt hundreds of billions of dollars in federal spending on everything from assistance to farmers, to Head Start programs, to disaster relief and public transportation. In a memo describing this, was obtained by ABC News, the White House Budget Office has ordered all federal agencies to cease any financial assistance if they believe the program might conflict with President Trump's executive orders. The directive is not specific about which programs would have to be suspended, but it's clearly far-reaching. It says, quote, this memorandum requires federal agencies to identify and review all federal financial assistance programs and supporting activities consistent with the president's policies and requirements. The only thing explicitly not included in this is Medicare and Social Security and anything directly given to individuals. But George, this is far-reaching. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer responded, one of many responding overnight, saying Congress approved these investments. They are not optional. They are the law. And you described it as a pause, George. It's important to point out this memo does not say how long the pause will last. There's nothing specifying when the pause is over.
Right, as you say, this could be have such sweeping impact. It also comes on top of a big shakeup at the Justice Department.
Yeah, that's right. The Trump administration has fired over a dozen career prosecutors in the Justice Department's national security and criminal divisions. These are people who were involved in any way in the cases against Donald Trump. These officials received an email from the acting attorney general on Monday telling them, in part, given your significant role in prosecuting the president, I do not believe that the leadership of the department can trust you in implementing the president's agenda faithfully. Those fired, George, include some of the Justice Department's most senior prosecutors. These are individuals who have served in Republican and Democratic administrations.
It also comes on top of action taken against some AID foreign assistance